Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Yesterday evening I did a couple of flash videos on a couple of stories of interest, shall we say, that I knew I'd be covering today. I'm going to take a look at these. Now this is the first one, which is to do with the legal bill for the Scottish Government taking the UK Government to court over the Gender Recognition Act. Now, when Alistair Jack presented that, there was a time frame. The SNP-led Scottish Government had until, I believe, yesterday, in which it could appeal the bill. It chose not to, and at close of business yesterday evening, it meant that the bill was effectively accepted and will be paid by the Scottish Government, or at least by the Scottish taxpayer, unfortunately. I personally believe that the bill should be paid directly either by Humza Yousaf or the SNP. If the legal advice was not to take the UK government to court, then they make that decision. It should be their bill, not the taxpayer's bill. I can accept that if the legal advice was that they did have a chance of winning, okay, a government is entitled to do that. Unfortunate, but you can accept it. But if the legal advice was you've got no chance, well, that's a whole different kettle of fish. But we'll take a look at this, see what's going on, and see if ever that advice will be released. Here goes. So, Scottish Government set to pay UK legal costs after the gender bill challenge. Now, this all really comes down to the fact that did they have the right to challenge? Now, I don't mean the right as in the legal sense, because yes, you've always got the legal right to do so. But did they have the right to do so under the rules about spending and wasting public money? And if the legal advice that was given to them was that they will not, or it is unlikely that they would win the case, then for them to proceed to court to challenge this on appeal should be seen as a gross waste of public money and punished accordingly. And indeed, I think the taxpayer would have the right, I think, to take the Scottish Government to court and force the SNP to pay the bill or the individual ministers concerned. Because if they've gone and made the choice themselves against legal advice, that should be enough. The Scottish Government declined to oppose a motion to recoup the costs incurred at the Court of Session. Presumably, the legal advice there would have been, don't challenge this, you're going to lose again. They've lost 8 in a row, and if they tried to challenge this, they're likely losing. That'd be 9 in a row, and it isn't looking good, is it? Anyway, the Scottish Government looks set to pay the legal costs incurred by UK ministers in the gender reform court battle after it declined to oppose a motion at the Court of Session. And of course, as the winning side, the UK Government are perfectly entitled to ask for costs. If you were challenging someone in a court and you won your case, most definitely you'd be wanting your costs paid. Thank you very much. In January of last year, Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack blocked the Scottish Government's gender reforms, invoking for the first time Section 35 of the Scotland Act, claiming it interfered with UK-wide equalities legislation. And in December, the court ruled the action was lawful, despite a Scottish Government challenge. Now, what they were challenging on wasn't his rejection of the law, and this is where it's a very strong legal point. They were challenging on the use of Section 35 and tried to say that Section 35 should not have been used. Their basic claim is it's never been used before. Well, just because something hasn't been used before doesn't mean it's not legitimate. It is part of the Act. On the creation of the Scottish Assembly, they all accepted and signed and were signatories to the Scotland Act 1999, which enabled, or 1998, the Act, which enabled the Parliament to be created in 1999. So they all knew the rules were all there, and Section 35 was most definitely in the rules. The fact that it hasn't been used before is neither here nor there. It exists, it's real, it's legal. And of course the court came down and said, yes, it exists, it's real, it's legal. And so Alistair Jack won, and it was quite a good victory. A victory for common sense, if nothing else. And it's going to cause ructions between the SNP Greens. And now, of course, because they're not challenging the the fees, by doing so is indicative that there are full acceptance of the decision of the court, and therefore that gender bill is now officially dead. Because the only way they could actually fight the gender bill at a higher court, maybe going to the Supreme Court, would be to fight the fees. The very fact of accepting the fees means they've accepted the loss. And so that gender bill is now dead. And that's it. Anyway, Alistair Jack announced earlier this month he would seek to recoup the costs incurred defending the Section 35 order, and he lodged a motion at the Court of Session on Friday. The Scottish ministers had until yesterday at noon. Oh, I thought it was close of business, but it was noon. My apologies, misleading you. To oppose the motion, but it is understood that they have declined to do so. And responding to the news, Jack said the Scottish Government chose to pursue this litigation in spite of the cost to the taxpayer. He says, I'm pleased they could have had the sensible decision not to oppose our motion for expenses. That could have further increased the cost to the taxpayer. Because he'd have just then gone back in and gone and get the legal boys on it, and they would have won it because they won the case. It's one of those positions where, you'd have to be a moron to oppose it. However, we know about the SNP being filled with morons, so there was a chance they would have opposed it. Speaking before the Scottish Affairs Committee in December, the Scottish Secretary said the cost had hit £150,000, although it's not clear if this has increased. It may well have done. Last week, Social Justice Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville said devolution is fundamentally flawed if the UK government is able to override the democratic wishes of the Scottish Parliament. No, you knew the rules were there. The whole point was there, that it was available. And the one thing that they keep saying is the Scottish Parliament. In truth, it is the Scottish Assembly, which has a series of devolved powers. It is not... what is the word? It is not a democratically mandated parliament for Scotland that is in total control. It is not sovereign. It is no more than a very powerful local council with powers that other local councils don't have, effectively. She said the costs incurred in this legal challenge relate to protecting the powers of the Scottish Parliament, she said. But it didn't. It wasn't. It was never there. It was the costs incurred were based on your own stupid decision to fight it. Publish the legal advice. Until you do, we know that the legal advice was don't do it. Because if the legal advice was, yeah, go ahead and do it, you'd have published that. And again, I keep saying it, it's true though. If you ask a politician a yes-no question and they cannot say yes, then you know the answer is no. So we say to them, if you published that legal advice, would it show that you were told you had a chance of winning? Yes or no? And they're not saying yes. They're not publishing it because they know. Anyway, the bill would have made it easier for a transgender person to obtain a gender recognition certificate by pretending to be a woman very, very quickly, and it's a load of old rubbish. Opponents of the legislation said it could impact on the protections for women and girls. Like we said yesterday in a video, they're now allowing biological men to strip search and intimately search women in a police station for no other reason than, hey, let's just make it so. We don't care about women, their protection, their safety or their rights. Despite the protestations which saw unrest in the Holyrood Chamber over the marathon two-day sitting in the bill's final stage, the legislation was passed by MSPs of all parties, and in December, Lady Haldane rejected the Scottish Government arguments that order had been the result of a policy disagreement, the order being the Section 35 order. And he won, and all is well, and everybody is happy, except for some weirdos. A tiny, tiny minority of weirdos who want to pretend that men are women and expect us to join in their lie. And I, for one, will not. I'm coming up. Now, I don't know the law on this, so I'm not going to say for sure, but I would like to think that there is some kind of mechanism where Alistair Jack, as the Minister for Scotland, has the authority, power or ability somehow to find out what the legal advice to the Scottish Government was over this matter. And he must obtain that legal advice and he must publish that legal advice to let people know whether the legal advice was, yes, you have a chance of winning, in which case the challenge, much as you disagree with it, was legal and fine. If the legal advice was no, don't, you have little or no chance of winning it, then that, of course, changes everything. And that legal advice must be published. Now, the fact, like I say, I maintain, the very fact that they haven't published that legal advice shows that the legal advice is no, you've got little or no chance of winning this. But they did it anyway. And at that point, that's a waste of public money. I would suggest that's a criminal waste of public money. And that it must come from somewhere. The minister must be charged. And who's the minister at the time? Angela Constance. So send the bill to her, put her in court, put her in jail. I don't care. Put them all in jail. I'm sure they've all done something illegal at some point. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment. Please share the video. Till next time, stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.